Hello, guys, and welcome back to Relevant Founders, brought to you by Relevant Software. Relevant is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers world-class standard products for Fortune 500 companies and promising startups. In our next episode, our guest shares with us their stories of success, challenges they faced, and forecasts for the industry's future. You're not going to want to miss it. So, Eric, if you can just introduce yourself to our listeners, please. It's much better for you to introduce yourself and what it is you're doing there at Movocash.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me, Matt. My name is Eric Solis. I'm what you would call sort of like a fail-forward entrepreneur. So those listening that haven't sort of had instant success, don't be dismayed. It comes slowly. I just am one of these guys that I'm more of a missionary than a mercenary when it comes to helping unbanked, underbanked. And I find that if you can reach those that are hardest to get to, you end up creating a better mousetrap, and then even the rich people want to use it. And that's sort of been the hallmark of my background experience and leading up to today as the founder and CEO of Movocash. That's Eric in a nutshell.
Very nice, Eric. So you said that obviously challenges and the difficulties to actually make success and get to that point of success. What was that moment where you thought, was there ever a moment where you thought, oh, I'm just going to pack this all in, I'm going to stop this, I can't keep on going? Or have you just always been so kind of damn determined to obviously get to where you've been, where you are?
If you don't mind, hell no. I mean, I'm in that state now. I mean, and really it's one of those things where, if I could encourage people again, it's the idea, it isn't about whether you think about, I can't do this, I quit, I'm done, I've had all I can take. If those moments don't come, you're not in it deep enough, right? That's part and parcel to the journey. It's really just about not giving in to it, continuing to climb that next hill, and sometimes those hills are steep. I used to do some mountain biking and I had some friends that were way better than I was. And they used to always say to me, just one more turn. It's right around this turn. I'd get around that turn. They'd say it again, one more turn, right around that turn. And I'm telling you, and I learned a lesson in that. You just got to get around the next turn, and so that's really my story, getting up the next hill and around the next turn. And sometimes like, but yeah, that's what it takes.
Eric, I hear a lot from founders, the need to pivot, the not even just the need, that it comes with the package of being an entrepreneur, pivoting constantly. Have you had any pivots recently where you thought, oh, this was a big one, this was a tough one?
Yeah. I mean, we actually had the pivot of all pivots. We were killing it. We opened up 2.5 million accounts on a prepaid platform. We were generating, we were on a trajectory of $70-80 million a year of revenue, growing, opening up 10, 15,000 accounts a day. But the technology was not, it was a proof of concept. Seriously, the agreements were not scalable. The technology was not scalable. We were not able to quickly enough, agile enough from a technological perspective to make changes as we learned we literally had to shut that down. We pivoted completely to a digital banking platform, which we now, are a neo-bank, full-blown digital banking solution. But making that decision to turn that off, I know that I had some shareholders and teammates that wanted to hang me by the ceiling from my toenails, right? And chop off my fingers. It was the hardest thing we've ever done. But, we're now to the other side. We recognize some things, much of which now a lot of other later stage companies have to kind of repackage and go back through. We did it early and now we're got a clean slate, and now we have more chasms in front of us, of course, but that was the latest pivot. And it was not just a pivot. It was the mother of all pivots, if you don't mind me saying.
One of those things when you put so much time, so much work, so much money into something, and then you get to a point where you think, this is not working, you've just got to turn it around. And that is a hard thing to do. How do you convince yourself? How do you convince your team, everyone, to come on, this is what we've got to do?
I think that, one of the things that I have made a hallmark of my leadership style, and if my team were on, I know for a fact they would agree, is that I am training them all to think like a CEO. I don't consider what functional area you're in. To my mind's eye, you're in training to be a CEO. So I force them to make really hard decisions all day long. In other words, it's not like anybody gets a free pass here. We're all in this together. And then the outgrowth of that, to answer your question, Matt, is that they are in. In other words, I have really strong hands in our organization. And if you don't have strong hands, you don't last long at Movo, and we, again, it's this concept of failing fast, failing forward. And when you're in fintech and you're building banking systems, you've got to be prepared that your failures are really well managed. And so that being the case, you could ask our team, if somebody leaves, somebody really important steps out, because everybody is in, very quickly recover. I heard somebody describe it, and I think it was my own mother, who's amazing. She described it as you reach in and you grab a handful of water, right? And if you do it right, when there's the bucket still full, and that's really Movo. It's a great way to describe our management. And I don't take the credit for it. I give the team the credit for buying into the philosophy and helping me to make that our reality.
We're actually coming a little bit back to the team management and stuff like this in a second. I want to go right back to the beginning. So let's just discuss for a second. Tell me about your MVP, your original MVP. How did you approach it?
So, if you don't mind, if I even distill it down even further, because an MVP implies that you have something to actually make, your most valuable product, right? So for me, it was more of a science project.
Okay.
In other words, what we were attempting to do was something that had not been done before. And the processing systems weren't in place. The card fulfillment systems weren't in place. The compliance and onboarding systems, hadn't been really articulated in the way we were envisioning. So it was really more about, and this is an important part of when you're really radically innovating as opposed to just incrementally innovating, is that you've got to go out and really, sort of like say, okay, how do I create just a really rudimentary proof of concept? And I don't say this to just align with a lot of the, line that everybody uses about if you got it perfect, you waited too long kind of thing. I mean, we really built I didn't think anybody would use it. And I mean that. And you ask anybody, they'll tell you it was ugly. It was like I had people were more critical of the UI UX of our 1.0 deployment. And it was just terrible. I mean, most of it, I didn't even have any of the creature comforts, zero. You couldn't do anything that you'd expect to do in a banking solution. And because I focused on the things that nobody else was doing, not the things everybody else was doing. I said, I want to make sure these critical pieces work. I know I can add all the bells and whistles and make it pretty. Putting lipstick on the pig is as easy as it gets, right? So that part I knew we could do. But what was super hard was making our unique deliverable, our value proposition work flawlessly. And that's what we focused on. And that's what we have today. And now we're in the process of really going out and putting the pig on the lipsticks, the pig on the lipstick. Yeah, let's do that. The lipstick on the pig. All right.
So how did you get then? So if you were at a point where you were so, let's not say unpleased, but you weren't at a level where you were happy with what it was at the beginning, how did you get it from there to where you needed it to be if what you were doing was so different to everyone else?
Well, the first the first perhaps disconnect there is that it's not where I want it to be. So I mean, we're only, a half a step better than we were in 1.0. It's still, and again, not to be cute, but it is still in a constant proof of concept stage, because in our industry, things change and evolve so quickly that to sort of have any sense that you've sort of arrived is dangerous. It's dangerous for our company in terms of, like the vision as we move forward. And it's dangerous for our customers because they need us to constantly be looking at what we're doing with a critical eye. So I would say, we're maybe on, first base, not third base. Yeah. So, and I hope that I can keep our mindset in a perpetual state along those lines.
Tell me a little bit there. So you were talking about hybrid, and you're going obviously overseas to get these guys. Where do you usually go, and why?
So for me, it was more of following a knowledge base that had deep insights and experience into the world in which we were traveling. So ironically, one of the probably most unlikely places you would go, we went into Pakistan, we went into Sri Lanka, we went into India, of course, and in 2 out of those 3, we went there because we had really strong strategic partnerships that had developed. One was industry, and the second was that I had one of my earliest champion super angel investors was a development company that put up early seed money to help me get the company started. And then we, again, we helped each other. I used his company as development, and he made an investment in us. I shouldn't say he, it was a company, but they did. And we developed a great relationship with the development team out of Sri Lanka. And then Pakistan was really more, these guys knew payments, man. They were super, great. And there was a guy that I had a relationship that he and I had been through hell and back, through the hallways of hell together, over 6-7 years. So, and to this day, I'm still connected to both of those organizations.
Okay, so Sri Lanka, Pakistan, interesting. What have been, apart from obviously you've got costs when you go to somewhere like India, why would you, apart from the relationships that you've created with them now, would you still look to go there? Have there not ever been any kind of hesitations with time difference and stuff like this when you're working that far from home?
It's interesting that you asked that question. Just yesterday, I was interviewed by the Stanford Seed. They're have I don't know if you're familiar with. They have a pretty robust organization that reaches out to help global entrepreneurs, and they've asked me if I'd get involved, and they asked me the exact same question. And what I said was that, man, for sure, you have to think about time difference is really one of the easiest things, but you've got to think about the health of mental health, physical health, spiritual health of the people that commit their lives to helping you, because they're up in the middle of the night and their families suffer, their children suffer. They don't sleep as well. They're in smaller areas and they're up in the middle of the night, with meetings and keeping them life up. And, it can be really difficult. They have a different culture, different belief systems, and so all of that comes into play, and you've got to come up again with, very specific behavior. I call it sort of like behavioral models. And let me, for a quick minute, we think a lot about financial models, marketing models. I don't think organizations across the globe think enough about behavioral models. How are we going to be together? How are we going to, whether you're, in the Ukraine and I'm in the US, how are we going to coexist at an organizational level to meet your needs so that you can be your best and I can be my best? And that is something that is really overlooked, I think. So, that's the approach we've taken.
How do you at MOVOcash? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we have, I mean, for us, we have what we call filters, and the filters are sort of like the human software. And everybody that gets involved with Movo, whether it's a new hire here in the US or whether it's an organization, I share the filters with them because I let them understand, here's how we're going to be together. Does this align with the way you sort of see the world? And if it does, then we have a pathway forward. And if it doesn't make me right and you wrong. It just means that we don't fit. Okay. And if we don't fit, we should recognize that now, because it's going to save us both all of us a lot of aggravation. Mm-hmm. And again, it doesn't work perfectly, okay, by any stretch, but it puts us on a path to where we can refer back. And we often will say, you know, we have even a common language that we create out of it. Like I can say to the team, you know, I'm in the red and that means something, you know, or hey, let's go into robust dialogue, or hey, what's your perspective? And so I can fast track a way to mean something and everybody understands what I'm saying. I say, let's go into the bubble. Everybody knows instantaneously what I mean by let's go into the bubble. So it's that kind of formulation of how we're going to be together on the front end, rather than attempting to do it once you're in the river, you know, in a you know, level 4 rapids, right? It's hard to make changes, you know, on the fly like that.
How did you come to that then, Eric? How did you come to the point of the necessity, let's say, of you know, picking out these keywords, the bubble, the red? How did you get to that point? Is this something that you learned from someone else, or through...
I'm going to keep the language clean here. I messed up a lot of stuff along the way. You know, again, I'm one of these, you know, low bottom guys, man. You know, like you know, when you have to scrape yourself off the bottom of the barrel, you learn a lot. You know, so I always say this: you learn way more in the valley than you do at the top. I mean, and by the way, if you can embrace that, seriously, if you can embrace that, you'll come out good. You'll be fine. Okay. Mm-hmm. So really, it's every time I'm down in the, you know, in the trough, I like look around and say, okay, what's down here? You know, I really will sit down, and I'm not exaggerating, for decades. If I see once in a while, I'll go just sit down and talk to a homeless person on a bench, right? Because that person's you've got something to learn there, right? And so I take the exploration and learning seriously, and then I compile what I learn. I don't just let it slip away. I think about it and I say, how do I integrate that into a path that can help all of us? Like, we learned something there, and it becomes it's almost like a living trust, you know, document that people will do when they're estate planning. I think of it that way, in terms of creating a path forward for, you know, myself, my family, and our organization.
Of course. Okay, you were talking about down in the valley compared to down right up there in the top. Let's talk about a little bit of challenges that you've come across recently. You just spoke about that pivot that you've done, the huge, obviously, the mother of all pivots. What else? What kind of challenges have you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
Well, gosh, I mean, I would say that we can look at it maybe in buckets, right? So we can talk about technology. Let me give you an example. We had a 4-hour outage because we made some modifications to our VPN in the way that our API calls are sent off to our processor. And we have very specific protocols where, man, we scrum things out. We make sure that before we do something like that, you know, we make a whole list of possible things that can go wrong. Well, my team just, you know, they were busy. They thought, oh, this is a slam dunk. There's no issue here. They do it every day. And we didn't do that. And I'll be damned if, you know, we weren't down for 4 hours, right? And it was, you know, it was not a fun 4 hours, but forget about that. The repercussions of it, you know, we took a hit in all of our KPIs. You know, we're still recovering because it just happened last week, right? So I mean, though, that's a really, we learned again, I'll tell you, you know, the team would tell you, we revisited the importance and why we follow protocol. Why do we, you know, we're not heavy on, you know, papering things up. but there's a certain amount of it, wash, rinse, repeat, man. And let's not ever violate those protocols. We had to go back and learn that. We're talking a lot about, what are we going to do in our B round? We're an A round organization. And I'll just tell you quickly, I've been a big believer in keeping dry powder. I'm one of these guys. I was around in the .com bust era. So I'm like, I saw what happened when valuations spiked and everybody went out and raised money at those valuations. They had no dry powder. When the bubble bursts and prices decline 50, 60, 70%, I say it this way: there is nothing wrong with building a company that's worth $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion. That's, man, big old high five and a bear hug, right? Unless you raise money at 30 billion, now you got a problem. You follow me? So we've been super intentional. The concept of bootstrapping is hard. It's the road less traveled. You tell a different story when you're bootstrapping than when you're not. It creates different problems. In other words, one could say, well, you've got a bit of a quality problem if you have 800 million in the bank and your valuation dropped from 30 billion to 3 billion. Okay, but you don't have anywhere to go there. Okay. Another problem, if you've only raised 12, 13 million dollars on a grand total of, let's say 20 million is your highest valuation, let's say, you may not have the war chest in the hard time and you got to get out there, but you've got a story to tell now. You see, so you got to pick your battle, and either path you pick is going to come with challenges. You just got to be prepared to deal with them. I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
With some specifics, right? In other words, those are
perfect.
Very specific.
Tell me then, so with the challenges, is there anything that you're finding at the moment in the kind of situation that we're all in at the moment? There's a lack of the saturated market. Yeah. So there's a lack of it's not so easy to find the engineers that you want and all the staff that you want because it's so competitive. Is there anything that you're finding specifically at MOVOcash that you haven't got enough of? Is there any kind of insufficiency in any area?
We are constantly battling with resource constraints. When you bootstrap, I think it's healthy. I think it's a little bit like, I'm not a Pollyanna, but I do look at things in the context of how's this help us? So, I don't know if my wife is getting her doctorate degree in nutrition. And one of the things that she shares with us is how fasting makes you stronger, right? It makes your body work harder, and it makes it absorb nutrients better. So the way I look at it is, we almost intentionally, the concept of fat and happy is not Movo style. We are on perpetual lean and mean. And, we think that fasting concept from a corporate perspective, while you get hungry, but that hunger makes you hungry, it causes you to look for things that you might not otherwise see. Okay. If you're not on high alert. So I don't, obviously getting into, good AI engineers, getting people with various disciplines within tech, obviously marketing, all of the disciplines, you can find good people. Again, that missionary rather than mercenary approach, I think helps open the door. People come into Movo and they go, this is different. And I want to be a part of something different. And so we typically find that when we go out and look, man, we have a plethora of choices, but we, out of decision and sometimes out of constraint, keep it focused.
Okay. So you're saying there obviously about the need to stay hungry. Yeah. The need to always be hungry for more. With that idea.
And by the way, can I say something quickly out of respect, knowing that you're in the Ukraine? it's easy for me to say that here in the US, and I just want to say that I get it, and my heart goes out to you and your team and your families and your people. Okay. And I know you've got a British accent, but I know you call that home.
At heart, Yeah. Thank you very much. They will see this and they will love that. They love as much support as possible. So yeah, definitely. With regards to being hungry, with regards to, that hunger for more, obviously that's showing that at MOVOcash, you're always looking to push, you're always looking to develop, grow. With that, is there any particular area at the moment where you're looking to expand? Any kind of, are you looking to expand your team, or are you going to go more outsourcing with your team? What are you going to do over the next couple of,
We have plenty of growing to do right here at home, for sure. We have one of the most vibrant markets, and we are growing beautifully. Okay. And the product that we have and the portfolio of products, we have I would call it almost like a super app where, people can do multiplicity of things through the MOVOcash app. For me, in terms of vision, it's all about global expansion. Movo from day one was about, I used to say, I can't wait, man, to see, some, sheep herder in Bangladesh using MOVOcash to trade, to trade, for a head of sheep for, blah, blah, blah. That turns me on. The idea of reaching out and by the way, I'm not a Johnny come lately when it comes to, financial inclusion. I pioneered the concept of micro investing and actually coined the term back in 1999. True story. A lot of guys executed way better than I did in getting it out there, whatever. But the point I'm getting at is that this is something that I have had a long-standing passion for. And so, if we can make it work here, one of my mentors, a guy by the name of Robert Bergelman out of Stanford University, one of the brightest strategic minds ever, he said, if you can make this work here, getting it to the rest of the world becomes a lot easier. So that's our focus: make it work here and then export it. But for sure, that's what drives my passion, is to get to the least of us, those that are, the most disenfranchised from just being able to transact, on a basic financial level. And I'll say this one last thing, the person with a smartphone who hopscotched over the landline, right? I believe that Movo has the capacity to do that for fintech, right? In other words, they're going to hopscotch right over and go straight to the equivalent of a smartphone when we get Movo, where it needs to be.
Obviously doing some research on you, Eric, I saw that you coined that term as well. So yeah, most definitely. With some more tech-specific questions, I saw here you were saying, I've got a quote: blockchain is not about innovating beauty, it's about building a balanced foundation that can change the world. Talk to me about blockchain and how you think it's going to change the world. This was, I believe, a few years ago. Has it started changing the world as you expected? Is it as fast as you expected?
I think it's for sure changing the psychology of the way people think in a really significant way. The mainstream thought of blockchain and crypto, it's here, the thought of it, but it's more an idea than an actual product today, right? And I think that the sort of proof in the pudding there is Bitcoin was not, Satoshi didn't come along and say, Bitcoin's going to be a great store of value that you should put your wealth in. He said it was going to be a cryptocurrency, yet it has failed miserably as a medium of exchange. Miserably. Go into any fast food restaurant, into any sit-down restaurant, go into any auto parts store, go into Walmart, and see if you and pull out your Bitcoin and say, I want to pay with Bitcoin, and see what they say. And by the way, I could say the same thing for Venmo and PayPal. There has not been really a penetration by these digital currencies, so to speak, or digital money, to where it is spendable in real time in 45 million merchants worldwide, like a Visa or MasterCard, or paper currency, right? So until that chasm is crossed, it's really a concept. And that is what I would say is the big challenge for crypto. And maybe I'm in the periphery talking about blockchain as a distributed ledger technology, and smart contracts and the things that I think Ethereum's doing. I think that there's applications that are coming that are radical for sure, but we're not there yet. So if I can give myself a quick plug real quick, I think MOVOcash, that was our intentionality, was to build that bridge, that true interoperability, where I could completely send you digital money in the Ukraine right now, in the big long vision of it. You could claim it digitally and instantaneously convert it into a form factor, that being a 16-digit card number that is universally recognized around the globe, right? And then using like NFC technologies, whether it's Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, have it converted on the fly in real time to an NFC solution that could be read by a reader. Now we're getting there, right? And if we can hold that on a blockchain so that the ledger system's much more secure, and we don't have to worry about the fraud that we've experienced up to now in the past with the centralized ledger systems, and yet still use, right, the distribution model of the networks, and we can merge these together in a way where it produces a seamless consumer experience, now we're making progress. And that's what we focus on.
So with this, are you, okay, it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, but are you happy with the speed at which you're able to produce this, that you're able to do all of this? Or is it, that kind of still be hungry idea?
So what an intriguing question, Matt. I would say that I kind of think of it in a double-fisted manner, okay? So I could say it this way, and it's not talking out of both sides of my mouth. It's a belief, if you're going to grab a hold of something, you better use both hands, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So on the one hand, yes. I mean, I think we have, we've got our patents that are granted in the US and Canada. They're pending in Hong Kong, China, India, and the entire EU, all across Europe. Okay, so in that sense, and we've actually launched the doggone product. It works flawlessly, beautifully. The use cases are just like endless. But on the other hand, no, we've not. There's still hungry people out there that don't have access to banking. There's still fraudsters that are able to rip you off and me off like that. So, that's the double-fisted faith approach that I would sort of think about it. On the one hand, yes, I have the faith that we're on the right path, but on the other, there's got to be another faith that says we got to get out there and get it done. Mm-hmm. That's the best way I can answer the question.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. So with AI in banking, talk to me about AI in banking, because you previously said that it's one of the areas to watch out for, yeah? What have been in the last, just over the last few years, let's say over the last few years, what have been the most recent kind of significant shifts in AI in banking?
I think that the the use case that I would like for the banking industry to really focus on is using AI for KYC, CIP, know your customer, consumer identification programs around the globe, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think, by the way, just back to the conversation about blockchain, I think that there's a super cool amalgamation between the two that could be super inspiring, where, you know, we're using artificial intelligence to identify people, right? There's so much data out there, but we haven't done a good job yet of using the data for identification purposes. I'll give you an example. You call your bank and you say, hey, you know, I'm Matt, blah, blah, blah. And they say, okay, Matt, what are the last 3 transactions in your account? Mm-hmm. And you go, this, this, and this. And so the human is able to look at it, ask you the question, connect it. Okay, you know, they ask you, of course, what's your social security address, but think of how archaic that is. See what I'm saying? Like we need models that when I go to sign up for a digital bank account, why in the world are we still asking for my name, address, date of birth, social security number when all that stuff's for sale on the dark web? Exactly. Why are we doing this? Yeah. It's insane, right? Doing the same thing over and over again produces the same results, definition of insanity. And yet we've got all of our information is on the dark web, right, for sale. So if we could figure out ways to really use artificial intelligence to look at your IP, look at your IMEI, you know, look at your device ID, and, you know, like 400 or 500 attributes that tell you that I am actually who I say I am. Mm-hmm. A human can't do that, but a computer can. And then we could overcome this fraudulent explosion that we're seeing in the banking industry.
Tell me, in regards to Movocash, then, obviously security is not even a great way to explain it, but just so important for your customers, for everyone that's using Movocash. How do you approach that situation with security? How serious do you take it, and how do you prove to your customers that you are taking it to the level which they need it?
So again, the beauty of it is that because the form factor that we're using is so ubiquitous, right? A 16-digit card number, my 14 and 16-year-old daughters know exactly how to use that 16-digit card number. I don't need to train them a bit, all right? And by the way, that next generation knows full well how to use a mobile phone, mm-hmm. you know, and it's very intuitive to them. Okay, now I start talking to people my age and they love that. It's a little different story. Okay, so step number one in proving that out is that they get it. They trust the technology, you know, and we deploy the best issuing bank technology that there is in terms of encryption and all that sort of stuff, okay? Now, the idea that we're able to use a 16-digit card number, much like a $20 bill that I might pull out of my pocket. So think about this for a minute, okay? In the olden days, in a local economy, you take a $20 bill, you go buy a Led Zeppelin record or a Van Halen record, or even better, a Sammy Hagar record, okay? And you put the money down on the counter, and they take the money, give you the record, you walk out and you're on your way, okay? You don't set your wallet on there and say, only take what you're entitled to, mm-hmm. okay? In today's world, when you put a card on file in a digital environment and the explosion of card on file, let me just point this out. In 2008, 0 downloads. 2021, 230 billion downloads. And over 50% of those downloaded apps are now asking you to put a card on file. Mm-hmm. This is a problem that didn't even exist. And they're saying, here, give me your wallet, give me access to all your money, and I'll only take what I'm entitled to. Now, that takes a lot of trust, okay? Mm-hmm. So by converting that form factor that everybody understands into the equivalent of a dollar bill, that intuitively makes sense that it's secure. So we don't really have a big sales job in that respect. Our big problem is, again, the gates, keeping the bad guys, because fraudsters are the first people to identify a really cool use case. Bitcoin, PayPal when it was young, Venmo. Fraudsters recognize good technology way before the general public does. So that's our biggest challenge, is keeping them out. Really quick, there's a really interesting statistic, because again, back to talking to our entrepreneurs out there, you've got to do the sanity check. Is this a problem that anybody cares about? Okay. You might think it's a problem, Eric, but does anybody else care about it? The stats are really quite amazing. In today's day and age now, over 60% of the people that are being asked to put a card on file now care. They're going, wait a minute, because enough of us have gone out to order one bag of coffee and ended up getting 3, I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't ask for, for a subscription. You accidentally click on something and lo and behold, you signed up for something. So, and they're hitting your card. So we all now have experienced that. So it's a problem people care about.
Right. So I saw your biggest, one of the biggest fintech predictions you had in 2021, I believe it was the rise of internet cash. Yeah. So this is one of the trends that you saw for 2021. How did your prediction for that work out? Did it rise as big as you expected, or has it kind of changed? Did it change in 2021? Was there a different trend which beat what your prediction was?
Oh, I think it's actually surpassed what any of us really expected. And again, let me define digital cash a little bit here, right? Because there's different segments of it, is the sort of key thing, right? So we talked a little bit about crypto, then we have sort of like the granddaddy of PayPal, and they've started to insert Venmo into the similar model where you can now go online and pay with your Venmo, you PayPal. Okay, so the digital cash and the way that, like, for example, peer-to-peer payments are transacting has exploded. I believe that the next generation of that is what we call send to spend, because if you think about it, the silos still exist. Okay, so again, walk into In-N-Out Burger and walk in and say you're going to pay with PayPal, say you're going to pay with Venmo, say you're going to pay with, they're going to all look at you and say, walk in and say, I'm going to use my MOVOcash, right? You could have just gotten that money sent to you. You're in California. That money could have been sent from New York 5 minutes ago, hit your mobile device, you spun it up, put it on an Apple Pay or Google Pay, and now you're buying that In-N-Out Burger with MOVOcash. Send to spend is the next generation of peer-to-peer, okay? And so in that sense, we're at the very beginning, not at the end. So we've had the explosion where everybody said, okay, digital cash, I got to learn about it. Okay, but they're going to really the names that they know, not the names that they don't, which makes sense. That's the way it starts. And so now everybody's sort of like going, okay, we say move over Venmo, because Venmo is, they're sort of the technology that was for the 1990s guys, right?
Is that your prediction for like the 2022, 23, or do you think it's kind of a little bit longer than that? How long will that take?
No, I think it's going to happen rather fast. I mean, because you're already seeing let me interoperability in our brains here. Okay, crypto has the same problem, and I've said this many times that blockchain and crypto catapulted us light years into the future technologically, but threw us back into the dark ages where fungibility, sort of like, again, not just a store of wealth, but working as a medium of exchange. So technologies that, like we have MovoChain, just by one example, that help you convert your crypto back into fiat on the fly in real time, that can be put onto a form of medium exchange as fast as like a wire would get the money to you. That is the future. And then once those technologies bake and the adoption gets, sort of like more advanced, Then the conversion of those where you tie them together more seamlessly, where they're not clunky, right, becomes sort of the future. So it's an evolution of the technology along those lines, but it starts where it starts.
How do you kind of, let's say, manage? I don't want to say the word manage, but how do you manage your team? How do you manage the guys at MOVOcash? Because it seems to me, obviously you're a tech guy, you are a tech guy, but you're also very, very much a people guy, very much a management guy. You're talking about these numbers, and you can kind of, it's important about the mental health and all of this. As the CEO, how involved are you, and kind of where do you place yourself? Is it not difficult to get involved too much with the tech part?
It's a great question, and I would say that my involvement, we're at what we would call in today's world the distributed team. Okay, so I think of us as, like, we talk about distributed ledgers, distributed nodes. We are humans that also are the highest level of the technology stack, and we're distributed nodes. And again, you'll see that I start, kind of like connects together, that behavioral model. Okay. And I get my team together, and they will tell you, okay, I say, I only micromanage for about 90 minutes a day. And it's when we're on our huddle, it is practicing the disciplines and the principles that we practice. And I want to hear it here. I want to hear it coming out of here, and I want to hear it coming out of here. Because when you go off, if you're just creating your own sort of path and your own way of seeing and doing and being in the world, it's going to come out when you come. And we do this every day, like diligently, man. And we start, at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And butts in your seats, man. And it's like, be on time, come prepared, have your KPIs ready. And I listen intently for every single word, every thought, and I'm challenging it. But I don't do it all day. I do it for that hour and a half to and it keeps me sharp, by the way. It's not a one-way street. And I hold myself accountable to the same standard. And we do that, okay, so that I don't need to be involved in every little thing you do. I trust you. And that trust is built through this ongoing sort of mentoring formulation process that we follow. So they're, we have they know, and again, by the way, we prioritize real quick. They know that if it's comes up to like a P quadruple zero, call me, check in with me. Okay. Like where that threshold is, and I teach them to listen to their gut so that they know when it's time to reach out. Okay. And we do have ways, OSs, by the way, very technical term, Sam, I'll figure it out on your own. I want to say on your pie, but we have DEFCONs, we have SEVs, we have Ps. And so we prioritize and triage, which helps them to say, okay, I bumped up to a point, let me get Eric involved. But the management is designed in such a way to create a lot of empowerment, decision-making, and we put a high value on critical thinking. And that's something that we really cultivate along the way. Can I say one thing real quick on that, Vanja, and then but one of the things, and I just, since you sort of kind of get it, I like that. Okay. So if I can get my people to connect this with this and this, and they got more neurons firing in their gut than they do in their brain, and I can help them do that, you can take somebody who you might think is a C player and turn them into an A+ player.
Absolutely. Wow. Eric, tell me, the last question that I'm going to ask you here is, what is the best advice you can give all the other entrepreneurs, other people starting out? What is the best advice you can give them in order to make their startup, their company so successful, just like you were doing, you're aspiring to do at MOVOcash? What is it you wish someone told you, maybe?
So the best advice that I can give, the best advice is tap into the invisible hand. Economists, of all shapes and sizes have referred to it. Some people call it the Force, whatever, even, Star Wars, like, I mean, there's all kinds of it out there that proves it's true. I don't necessarily need to get into, my particular, faith or belief in terms of how that works or how I define it. But if you can get the invisible hand, if you learn how to engage the invisible hand in your business, you will see around corners that you otherwise wouldn't be able to see around. You'll hear things that you would otherwise not hear. You'll see things you would otherwise not see. And you'll have that force working for you when you're sleeping. And that is the most important advice I would give to an entrepreneur.
Hey guys, it's me again. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, be sure to press the thumbs up button below. And also, whilst you're there, hit subscribe. Otherwise, you could miss out on all of our interesting content we've got coming your way in the near future. Okay, guys, take care and see you soon.